This is Showtime, a podcast about the people behind the curtain and the stories that shape them. I'm Andrew G, and each week I sit down with creatives, leaders and risk takers from the theatre world and beyond. We talk about what they do, why they do it, and what it really takes to keep showing up. Today, I'm joined by Lloyd Jones, a passionate music fan who has spent over 2 decades shaping the live entertainment scene across Australia and Asia, managing iconic venues including the Palais Theatre and Festival Hall. Lloyd's career lives at the intersection of creativity, community and unforgettable live moments. Welcome to Showtime, Lloyd Jones.
Thank you very much, and that's a very lovely intro. It's good to be here.
I'm really keen to get into this with you. How did your love for live music begin?
I think as kids, you have a lot more of an openness and, just such a being drawn into live music. And thinking about that, I'd say live music in particular, I have a very distinct memory of being at Westfield Shopping Centre in Sydney and being on the shoulders of my mother and enjoying a free John Farnham concert. Just the electricity in the air and the just going, why is everyone so excited? But then actually discovering why and having that very distinct memory on that front. Yeah, and then just starting to playing any kind of music I could in the house of any kind of cassette tape or record, showing some age there. So, yeah. That's
so cool that you saw John Farnham up close and personal at a Westfield shopping centre.
Yeah, I can't remember the context, but must have been doing some kind of promotional tour.
Was that when you sort of really felt that you fell in love with live music?
Probably a similar era, but, I think going to one of my first ever musicals as well. I remember going to see Beauty and the Beast in Sydney. I'm pretty sure Bert Newton was in it, and just the magic behind it, just going, how did they do that? And then going home, wanting to make my own little performances and getting some begrudgingly other people involved as well. But I think just being part of it is just all I wanted to be.
When you say begrudgingly, do you mean you begrudgingly collaborated with others, or they were dragged in kicking and screaming?
Probably more the friends that kind of just did what I asked them to do, or the people that were dragged into the living room to be made to watch my performance. Those classic living room or backyard moments that, some of those things begin.
You've lived in quite a few parts of Australia, in fact, quite a few parts of the world. How have those experiences taught you about different people, different places, and how they consume and enjoy live entertainment?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's pretty deep. I'd say every place you live and call home, that place becomes part of your soul. So I feel that no matter where you are, there's always parts of your soul elsewhere. But I guess all the people that you meet along the way, you really start to see things from different perspectives, and that hunger to continue to learn and see how other people see things. Probably my most recent experience, I got to have the privilege of working over in Thailand, in Bangkok, and just kind of, seeing the differences, but also just that real universal connection to live music that, all coming together and sharing that joy, no matter what it is. And I think it's such an important need for us all to go experience that live experience. So, yeah.
What's so unique about running iconic venues? And in Melbourne, I'm thinking of venues that you've worked in, like Festival Hall and, of course, the Palais Theatre.
I think it's the uniqueness and the privilege is that these venues aren't necessarily just bricks and mortar, but they just house so many memories and chapters. And being part of just one chapter, knowing that you're carrying the flame from the past to getting to ensure that this is then passed on to the next generation or chapter. And so one of my favorite things is being alone in these spaces, preferably with the lights on, otherwise it gets a bit creepy. But you can just feel that essence, feel those stories, like iconic performances have been there that you never got to experience, but you can just imagine what they'd be like. And getting to know that some of the ones happening now are going to probably be iconic in the future. So, I think that's really special.
And how do you balance commercial outcomes of a venue like this while preserving that venue's cultural soul?
As the operator, like Live Nation being the operator, of course, there's that element of needing to be commercially successful because, we want to be able to, one, respect the importance and the significance of venues like this and the need to have them in the live entertainment experience. But I think also, being commercially successful leads into we need to cover the costs. Sometimes these venues are a lot more expensive to run than even a new venue. But I think it's also important to be commercially successful so the local community can be commercially successful. And for example, one of my favourite things is walking down Ackland Street and there's going to be a show at the Palais that night and just seeing the buzz beyond the venue, but actually in the local community, that all the cafes and the restaurants are filled. They're all buzzing and sharing that larger experience, that it's not just within that venue.
And these venues, I mean, they're bricks and mortar, but there's so much more. And you touched on that before. What role do you think these venues have in shaping the cultural memory of a town like Melbourne?
Venues themselves, they can often be that glue between, they're housing that experience, they're housing the memories, etc. I think everyone can list and think about, I was there at this moment, I was there with my first love and I remember being at that venue for that experience, or with my group of my mates and we're all dancing to that song in that moment. And so venues are really an extension, but also that glue that makes sure that the artist and the fan can feel connected. I think that's just, be able to do that every day and be part of that is such a special experience.
And how do you see that relationship between artist, audience and venue?
Other than, of course, the artists, everyone's going to see the artist, often, that's, of course, the main motivation. But venues are really that piece that's in between them all, that, we want to make sure that, of course, they're having a safe experience, but a smooth one. And an extension of that live experience is becoming more and more important. So every element on this and the steps throughout that event need to be part of that, and everyone really wants that special experience. So, yeah, I think venues really hold the keys to make sure that that's a great one.
What do you think something small but powerful that can make a venue feel really welcoming to people?
Well, I would say, and this is something I always talk to staff about, and one of my favourite things to do is just that shared excitement that, sometimes I've just jumped on the door to help out and, scanning tickets, because it's just one of my favourite things to do. Is fans are coming through, they're in an excited mood and they're coming to see their favourite artist or a performance they've been really, really keen to see or heard about. And even if a staff member isn't 100% as knowledgeable or into that artist, they get to channel and share that energy and if anything, get educated themselves on why it's such an exciting night for them.
Do you think we're doing enough to preserve historic venues in Australia?
Yes, to an extent that there's such a spotlight in ensuring we preserve places like, the Palais Theatre or Festival Hall, because, I think Festival Hall, for example, it's one of the first venues that's been protected from a heritage perspective for cultural reasons, not necessarily the bricks and mortar, but what's occurred there. And I think that real movement to ensure we protect things like that has become more and more important. And, I think businesses like Live Nation have been so pivotal in ensuring that happens, like all the improvements and upgrades, for example, at the Palais Theatre, to ensure that it's going to live until the next version of itself, ensuring that experience of life continues. Like the foyers now have the look and feel of what they would have looked like when the venue opened. Restoring all the seating, making sure it's got great heating and cooling systems, but doing it in a discreet way that you don't even notice that the venue has now got modern air conditioning standards. I think, of course, there's always room for improvement personally, like from across the industry, because, I just don't think that we're perfect, but I think we're really, as a community, if there's ever any hint of, oh no, that there's a threat, the next day there's usually people behind it and making some kind of spotlight on that.
I've grown up with the Palais Theatre virtually in my backyard, and it's a local place. I've seen a lot of theatre and music at the Palais. But not only is it a local theatre, it also happens to be, I believe, the largest seated theatre in the country and maybe the Southern Hemisphere. But it is very much a local venue. And one of the amazing things is the Palais Theatre Community Fund. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
When Live Nation took on the lease in 2017, part of the commitment that we, recognising that it is such a community-focused venue is wanting to make sure that it includes the community but also gives back to the community. So that's how the Community Fund came about. And really what we do is everyone who walks through that door, 50 cents go into a fund. And so then that fund is then distributed by a committee which is formed by both community members and the Palais Theatre management to be able to review applications for different either charity or non-for-profit groups putting in an application for some kind of idea or project and giving that money out to those people.
And what are some of the projects and people that the fund supported so far?
Look, across now around 8 years now and 12 rounds, how much time do you have? But it's a very long list and it's such a, such a favourite part of mine to be able to talk about it. But I guess to give some examples of the diversity of those kinds of initiatives from, like, did you know that there's a group of people that walk around and pick olives off public olive trees in the city of Port Phillip and then turn them into olive oil? And so the fund actually helped covered some of the costs of the machinery or whatever things that, to actually turn those olives into olive oil, to, a cricket ball bowling machine for a local cricket club, to, purchasing prams for a St Kilda mums group, to purchasing some toys for a toy library. It's helped finance and provide some finance for local theatre productions, and then also to other theatres and venues in the region for some of their own restoration works, from mirrors for the ballet school at the National Theatre, to some of their seating project, their own seating project. So many different organisations or initiatives, and it's great just looking at them again and being reminded about all the other ones as well.
Lloyd, there's a funding round open at the moment. Who can apply and what's the process?
Non-for-profits and registered charity groups and community groups like that within the City of Port Phillip that are doing some kind of initiative within the region can apply. And we really wanted to make the application process really simple. I think that there's a lot of different people involved and have provided the feedback that, sometimes these grants are massive, big hoops to jump through. And we just wanted to make a simple process, one form that apply. We usually list, like you said, there's one currently on at the moment. We usually list them on the Palais Theatre website in the community support page of when they're happening. The community group then goes and reviews the round and the applications, and then ensures that as many people and groups as possible can receive those funds.
And as you were saying before, it's about live music and art and performances, but it's any not-for-profit group or project is eligible to apply. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, and I think some people would look at some of the projects and go, "Oh, that's but for that group, it's so important." Some of those groups, some of these initiatives could be something as simple as, hey, getting a new awning across this section of their building, but what that can achieve is such an important aspect for what they need for their own goals or plans for their group. So it could be something as simple as that, or some kind of live music initiative. If anything, if there's any questions that don't hesitate to ask if that could be considered, I guess.
So with such a diverse group of stakeholders who have been funded by the Palais Theatre Community Fund and can apply, how do you measure the fund's success?
I think I go back to the list. just looking at all the different people who are involved. Of course, there's a standard thing for grants. There's a small acquittal that they just list out what that's been achieved. And collating and looking at all the stories, the pictures, and how it's impacted people, I think that's the simple way we measure the success of it. And also the diversity, that new people, new organisations coming and applying is another great example of it getting extended out to more and more people. And that's really what we want to achieve.
And what are your hopes for the future of the Palais Theatre Community Fund?
I think it's just looking at more and more ways we can find opportunities for the fund. And, after every round we all meet as a committee. Me, myself, I'm not on anymore, but the committee as itself reviews, looks at the people who applied, looks at new ideas of how we get it out there, or ways we can utilise the fund. So my hope is that it just continues to evolve and we're finding new ideas and ways to find how we get the money to the people that need it.
And if you had to sum up the Palais Theatre Community Fund in just one word, what would it be?
I would just say empowerment. That these groups from all walks of life have an idea, and just being able to provide some money to help that happen and, provide it, and then they run with it and see where they go with it. So, I think that's just part of one of the great things about being an extension and part of that community.
I'm with Lloyd Jones. We're talking about the Palais Theatre Community Fund. It's open. The current round closes very, very soon on the 4th of July. For more info and to apply, go to palaistheatre.com.au/community support. There'll be a link down below. I think community-support. But anyway, have a look at the link down below. Lloyd, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your career so far, and for talking to us about the Palais Theatre Community Fund.
It's a pleasure, Andrew. Thanks for chatting with me too.